Alright, hi there people, welcome back to another exciting episode of VHS Crazy. I'm going to try and get more of these coming out soon, because I know it's been a slow series, and I hope this doesn't take more than a year to get through all 47 of these tapes. But that said, today we're going over a movie that I think you should definitely have in your VHS collection if you don't have it yet, that being Thelma and Louise with Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis. Let's get right into the Thelma and Louise action. I know it doesn't make any sense, Thelma and Louise action, but let's get into it.
Hello, popcorn delivery.
Put a little weekend in your week. Rent a video.
Louise is directed by Ridley Scott, who, well, I will say that when he does knock it out of the park, he really does. Like with this and Alien, he also has his flops, like Gladiator and Prometheus, neither of which are that good. But when he really tries, I mean, he can really put something forward. I think, more than Ridley Scott's direction, you can attribute this being a really good movie to the screenplay written by Callie Curry. It is a really good screenplay. This is a formative movie for the female buddy movie. It takes the formula of a male-run road trip movie like Road to Morocco with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby, and says, what if it was gal pals instead? Part of the appeal of Thelma and Louise is obviously that Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis just have really good chemistry and play off each other really well. Also, that Thelma and Louise are very different characters in the way they approach a given situation. Louise being the wise old sage who's been to Texas and has this past with this Jimmy guy, and, she's seen it all.
I'm not going to tell you what's going on. Someday soon you'll understand why I can't, but I'm not going to, so don't ask me.
And as a result, she's more jaded, but she's also more liberated, whereas Thelma is the more inept one who's in an abusive relationship with her scumbag husband, who's also a complete moron, and she's also less liberated, but also more, she's more prone to take risks. So right off the bat we have two very different main characters, which leads to a lot of interesting conflict and whatnot between the way that Thelma sees something and the way Louise sees something. Gina Davis obviously is a big part of why this movie succeeds. She has tons of range. I don't think Gina Davis gets enough credit for the role she's in, but she has so much range. She's in Beetlejuice, and she's in Earth Girls Are Easy. I don't know if I've said this before, but Earth Girls Are Easy is one of the best movies ever. See it if you haven't, you'd be amazed. But her character in Earth Girls Are Easy is so different from Thelma. So, she has a recognizable face, with these puffy cheeks and the lips. It's a very recognizable face, but she can play different characters so easily. She can just switch them on and off. It's wild. She has so much range. Susan Sarandon obviously brings a lot of heat as Louise, and this is just, like I said, a really formative movie because it takes, this innocent type weekend getaway and escalates it until Thelma and Louise become the modern day gosh dang, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, but they're women this time. And obviously a lot of people cite this as a formative work in feminist cinema, and I would have to agree, but I have to say that you can just watch this if you're not a feminist even, and it's a fun watch. I guess if you're an anti-feminist, then this movie probably isn't for you, but if you're just neutral on the subject, it's still just a really incredible movie with tons of talent and tons of fun shit going off, and the movie doesn't try to defend what Thelma and Louise are doing, really. They are criminals, and they do rob gas stations and, lock people in trunks and stuff, and the whole time it's these two girls are clearly off the rails, but, at the same time it is about, two women just going out and making it their own thing, and, it is very intense. So, if you watch this movie thinking it's just going to be a fun little buddy comedy, it gets really intense, and I like that. This movie takes risks. You might see Thelma and Louise and think, oh, it's just like Laverne and Shirley or something, but nah, Thelma and Louise they kick it up a notch. They really take things to the extreme. And I think this is an interesting premise. I think Thelma and Louise has an interesting premise. And this might sound weird, but in a sense it has the same premise as Groundhog Day, which is about a guy who can do anything with no repercussions. Thelma and Louise feel like they can just do anything with no repercussions because their lives are already a shambles and they've put everything behind them, and they just feel like, well, you know, it's either we drive off the cliff and blow a bunch of shit up, or we get life in prison. So they choose the fun option because their lives before that were so boring.
Oh, God damn!
I also think this movie is really good when it comes to pacing. We get one scene with Louise that sets up that Louise has a boring waitress job. We got one scene with Thelma, which sets up that Thelma is in an abusive relationship with her misogynist, chauvinist pig of a husband. And then we start the road trip at about like 15 minutes in. Then the inciting incident comes at about 20 minutes in. And from there, it's just a wild, spectacular, fun extravaganza. So Thelma and Louise doesn't waste any time in getting straight to the action. So I like that about it. There's no messing around. Every single minute is relevant to the plot, and also at one point even, I forget whether it's Thelma and Louise, I think it's Louise says, this is like a snowball effect. And yeah, I couldn't really think of a better way to describe this movie. It's like a snowball effect. Man, I miss the days when people referred to stuff as the snowball effect instead of the butterfly effect, because it was so much less pretentious. That said, I don't think this movie is especially misandrist, it's just feminist. So, like, you know, there are guys in here who are scum, but, you know, it's set in a part of the country where guys are more scumbags, and that makes sense. And also, not all the guys are scum. Like, for instance, Louise's old flame, Jimmy, while he does get kind of angry sometimes, he's not a bad guy, you know, he's not like he throws furniture around, but he never tries to hit Louise or anything.
What, you fucking kill somebody?
He's just like, oh, you don't want to marry me. And he tries proposing to Louise, but she's like, nah, I'm too far deep in this. So, Jimmy's a nice guy. You also have Harvey Keitel in this as the main cop, and he's actually just trying to do his job, and he even, at the end, is like, we don't need to chase these girls with like 10 cops because they're so scared and they're going to drive off the cliff. And then his partner, who's this bold guy, is like, well, you know, we have to chase them. And, you know, he understands their struggle because he's dealing with trauma because his daughter died. And, you know, he's like, man, dealing with this shit as a woman must be so hard for Thelma and Louise. And he tries his best to, like, just bring them in and make sure that they're given a fair trial, because the inciting incident is completely justified. He tries his best. So Harvey Keitel isn't a scumbag in this. He's just trying to do his job as the police lieutenant, and, you know, he can't just let them go, but also he really, like, sympathizes with them because they're so, like, far gone. Now, we also got Brad Pitt, and this is one of Brad Pitt's best movies. He plays the hot cowboy.
No, probably not. But I appreciate your time. You all have a good day, all right?
He plays the hot, steaming cowboy, and he's also, I'm not going to spoil it because it's great though. Brad Pitt, what a good actor. I don't know how Brad Pitt, like, people say Leonardo Dicaprio is a good actor, but he's just full of shit. The only reason Leonardo DiCaprio is famous is because he's hot. Whereas Brad Pitt's hot, don't get me wrong, and he shows off his muscles in this movie, so, you know, if you're turned on by Brad Pitt, this is the movie for you. But he's also just, like, a really good actor. And he calls to mind the screen legends of the past, like Cary Grant. You know, he's not a method actor like Leonardo DiCaprio, who goes out and films The Revenant and eats a bare intestines and wades through the snowy waters, and he's like, I suffered so much for this movie. You know, Brad Pitt doesn't do that. He's just a by-the-books actor. Obviously, this is quite a bit before his time in Meet Joe Black and Fight Club. So this is one of his first movies, and he's really young. He's like 20, and he's so young, and he just ups the movie once he starts showing up, and his presence is just so fun. Really a great element in this movie. So Thelma and Louise is definitely a very formative movie for the 90s, for female movies, for road movies, which, you know, I wouldn't even really call female movies a genre. You know, I mean, if you're a guy and you don't enjoy Thelma and Louise just because it's a really fun romp, then, like, you know, you just take yourself too seriously. I find it so weird that when this movie came out, it had like a bad reception initially, because like the 90s before Thelma and Louise were just so like pissy about any movie that was about women. I find it so weird that this movie initially had a negative reception just because people were so angry about, like, oh my gosh, it's women doing their own thing, you know. The 90s were just so, like, angry, you know. But obviously, this movie has now got the recognition it deserves. It was recognized as historically significant in 2016, which, in my opinion, is too long, because, like, this is a seriously just, like, influential movie in every aspect, because, like, before Thelma and Louise, there really wasn't a movie like Thelma and Louise. Like, Thelma and Louise started its own thing, its own, like, sub-niche of movies with, like, well, really, there aren't really even any movies that even come close to replicating the kind of, like, unhinged success that Thelma and Louise gives off. Like, this is just a movie that, it just gives off success. This movie is just a successful movie. I wanted to write something that had never been on the screen before, said Kelly Currie, and there's her first script, so that's also just like Kelly Currie, just completely like, and I think it's so ironic that like Ridley Scott gets the credit for this. It's Kelly Currie, she's the screenwriter. I often believe that screenwriting is the most important thing in terms of making a movie. You know, like, directing is okay. It establishes what the movie will look like visually, and a movie will be very different if it's directed by a different guy. Like, for instance, if, like, Hitchcock directed 2001: A Space Odyssey, it would have been a completely different movie. But the dialogue and characters and stuff, that's also very important. And this is the kind of screenplay you can tell this is a screenwriter type movie, because there's so much going on simultaneously, a lot of characters to keep track of. It tries to make a complex plot with a lot of moving pieces. It's like a Rube Goldberg machine that just goes off. The LA Times says Thelma and Louise reimagines the buddy film with such freshness and vigor that the genre seems positively new. Right about that, not only does it make the two main characters women, it's also just a really different movie from anything that came before it. This movie completely switches things up and flips everything on its head. Breaks a lot of tropes, a lot of conventions. I've dealt with people in the past who think that, like, all movies can just be boiled down to tropes. That, like, tropes are some kind of universal law. But you can absolutely break formulaic conventions. And Thelma and Louise is a good example of that. It completely, like, outdid the competition and, like, completely did new things. So it's not impossible to do something new. You know, I hear all the time today from a bunch of morons who only want to excuse the unoriginal schlock that's going on Netflix. Well, you know, it's not this thing's fault that it can't come up with a new idea. New ideas are hard to come up with. Yeah, tell that to Kelly Currie. It's her first script and she just comes up with a new idea. Not that hard, you know? Not hard to come up with. Thelma and Louise, continuing the description here. It's rated R, obviously. It's very raunchy. It's not the raunchiest movie. Like, it's very I think one of the things which makes it very appealing is that it handles everything very tastefully. When something is sad, it treats it as sad, and when something is happy, it treats it as happy. It's a very, emotionally balanced movie. It's got Susan Sarandon, Gina Davis. It's from 1991, so it really set up the 90s. There's not any 80s in this. It's just the 90s. Also, the cinematography is fantastic. I know I said Kelly Curry's screenplay was a major factor in why this movie is so successful, but I mean, just the sweeping vistas, just the American landscape, phenomenal. You see Thelma and Louise's car as it goes around the desert, it goes through all these mountains, and it's just fantastic. I mean, this is the kind of, when you make a road movie, you really want to capture what it's like to be traveling through America. Also, all the action is very believable. There's one explosion, and it's a gas truck, and that's something that would explode. These days in movies, it just tries to make everything explode. But back with Thelma and Louise, if you want to have a big ol' explosion, you had to make it something that would actually explode. And the car chase at the end is completely believable. Their convertible goes under a pipe or something, and the cop cars can't go through a pipe. It's believable because, every time Thelma and Louise do something crazy, they know they won't get away with it, because you're not gonna, but, there's no escaping from it. But, on the other hand, they only do things which are plausible. And I think that's something a lot of action today is missing. So, yeah, Thelma and Louise definitely nails that. I think Thelma and Louise is good because it has a lot of moral ambiguity. It really makes you think, are these two girls doing everything right, or are they just unhinged? It calls into question your sense of morale and what's right and what's wrong, and everything's turned upside down.
Emma, I'm sorry. We needed the money. Now we have it. Oh, shit. Oh, shit. Oh, shit!
Because Brad Pitt turns out to be not who he says he is, and then the husband turns out not. And there's a lot of funny moments in here too. There's a ton of jokes. There's a ton of funny bits. And overall, it's also great at portraying the early 90s country scene, which is very different from the country type scene today. The part in the honky tonk is pretty wild. It reminds me kind of the Patrick Swayze movie Roadhouse, but better, obviously. Roadhouse is a really funny movie if you haven't seen it. It's kind of comparable to something like Tom Cruise's Cocktail or like that. Thelma and Louise is absolutely not campy. It's not cheesy. The acting is spot on. One of the best dramas ever made. And I think it deserves as much recognition as possible. Now, if you'll remember, I mentioned Thelma and Louise back when I did my review of The Sweetest Thing. And I'd say that these two movies are exact opposites. I just find that so weird, that one The Sweetest Thing is a incredibly bad movie, and it even has a part with a road trip, so it's trying to be like Thelma and Louise. But it's not. And then this is the genuine article. It's topical, it's empowering for women, and it's overall just a really great movie, even if you're not a woman, so no reason not to watch it. It's freaking great. And it's 2 hours and 9 minutes. Tape plays really good. The tape always plays really good. I think tape degradation is an urban legend, because this just looks great. Then again, this is from the MGM/UA Contemporary Classics collection, so it might be remastered a little or something, I don't know. It says it's a drama, but it's more a comedy than a drama, because there's a lot of hilarious parts, and it's not a sad movie. It's a really gosh dang happy movie. It's really fun. Yeah, Thelma and Louise is a frickin' romp, and if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend you do. don't watch The Sweetest Thing. That thing is garbage. And Thelma and Louise is just great. Especially Geena Davis. Like I said, Geena Davis, underrated actress, and the roles she's in are absolutely phenomenal. Watch Earth Girls Are Easy. It's fantastic. So yeah, Miss Jeff Goldblum and Susan Sarandon really pull it off as Thelma and Louise, going down as one of the most iconic duos in cinematic history. Obviously, it's referenced in James Veitch's series Scamelot, as well as a lot of other places and stuff, and just a very well put together thing. I just find the premise so fascinating of like these ladies who have nothing to lose and they completely just go flat out bonkers. And not all the guys are like bad. Like Jimmy's okay for the most part.
I'm sorry.
And Harvey Keitel, he brings a heat. He's got Harvey Keitel, great actor, fantastic. Anyway, that's gonna do it for Thelma and Louise. What do I give Thelma and Louise? I give Thelma and Louise, that's right, 5 stars. You couldn't give Thelma and Louise a lower score if you tried. In fact, I'd like to give it a higher score. I'd give it a 6 if I could, but 5 stars I think is ample for this complete blast off of a movie. It's absolutely phenomenal. It's a lot of fun. Just a really great movie overall. And it really does a good job of setting up these characters and getting them from point A, which is like working and just being in a boring situation, to point B, which is driving off a frickin' cliff. Okay, technically that's a spoiler, but like if you don't know the ending of this movie, it's one of the most well-known movie endings ever, then I don't know what to tell you. But yeah, it gets them from boring circumstances and just amps up the action, which is something I think more movies should strive to do. This is a groundbreaking movie, fantastic, good stuff. Watch it, give it a try. Also, it's got Brad Pitt, and who doesn't like Brad Pitt? I don't like Brad Pitt Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but young Brad Pitt, there's nothing to hate. Meet Joe Black is an absolutely awesome bomb sauce movie, fantastic. Yeah, great cast, competent director, and really great screenplay. It's like a killer screenplay. Also, Thelma and Louise's car is really cool. That's another thing that I think a movie needs, an iconic car. You got the DeLorean, you got Mr. Bean has his own car that's, its own unique car, and then Thelma and Louise with their like 66 Thunderbird, absolutely classic, recognizable, and we're a great movie, so check it out, give it a try, give it a spin, and you won't be disappointed. Thelma and Louise, great freaking movie. That's gonna do it for this week. Like I said, I'm trying to get these reviews out some more. If you want to encourage that, then write to Nicholas Cicada, 1424 Columbine Street, number 1, Denver, Colorado, 80206. That said, until next time, that's Thelma and Louise for you. Just overall great stuff. Sayonara, suckers.